Okay, hello, this is Matt Brickman, and in this tutorial I'm going to go over just basic media management when you're starting a new project using Final Cut Studio and Adobe Creative Suite, etc. And, and then just the basics of Final Cut Pro, setting up a new project in Final Cut Pro and setting your scratch discs in Final Cut Pro. So one of the really important things when you're starting a new project is setting up a proper folder system and file system so that you can keep all of your files organized. If you don't do this and you just start throwing stuff on your hard drive, um, either just not in a folder or even in a folder, it can get messy. You have QuickTime movies and graphic files and audio files and project files all over the place. And if you save multiple versions and if you need to find something in the future, then it can get very difficult. So what I'm going to go over now is just setting up a basic file folder system so that you can help keep all of your folders and files organized. So the first thing I'm going to do is on my desktop, just right click and go new folder. Now I'm going to do it off my desktop because that's easiest for this purpose. If ideally you should be doing this on your external hard drive, um, just on the root of your external hard drive. So make a new folder and I'm going to call it, let's say, project 1, and you can name it specific to whatever project you're going to be working on. So if I do that and hit enter and then double click on the folder, that'll open up the folder and you can see that it's just a blank folder. So now inside this project 1 folder, I want to make a series of other folders. So if I right click inside there and go new folder, then that gives me another one, and then I can name it, I'll call it FCP, which is Final Cut Pro project file. And I'm going to make another one, call it exports. And I'm going to make another one and call it footage. So when I capture all or transfer all of my footage from my camera, it's all going to go into this folder. And I'm going to make another one, maybe call it music. You can see the idea here is to make one main project folder and then inside that make some subfolders and break it down for each kind of file you're going to have, because if you, again, in this folder, if you just throw everything in it, it could get confusing. So if you do this and save all of your exports in one folder, your project files into another, and so on, then you'll know exactly where everything is, and it'll be easy to find when you have to hunt for a file, which happens quite often. So that's kind of the basic setup of a folder system that you should create at the beginning of each project. So you can see that I've done that on my desktop before I've even opened any of the software. So I haven't even opened Final Cut yet, and I've done this. Okay. So once you've done that, the next step is to open the piece of software that you're going to use, and in this case it's Final Cut Pro. So I'm going to click on Final Cut Pro and I'm going to go File, New Project. So that just gives me a fresh new project. Now the first thing, before I even do anything, I'm just going to save this project file. So File, Save Project As, and I'm going to go to my desktop, Project 1, and Final Cut Pro project file. So this, I'm going to rename it. This folder is the one I just made, and it's exactly where I'm going to save my Final Cut Pro project file. So I'm going to just call it Project 1 and hit save. It's a bit off the screen there. I'm just going to hit save. So I'm just going to quickly flip back to my Finder, and in that same folder that I made, if I go Project 1, Final Cut Pro project file, you can see inside that folder is my Final Cut Pro project. So you can see already things are becoming organized. Alright, I'm going to flip back to Final Cut Pro. Now another main thing you have to do in Final Cut Pro before you start anything is set your scratch disk. Now what a scratch disk is a destination that you need to set on your hard drive that is a folder that you need to set, and it's going to contain all of your media for this project that you're going to transfer from your camera. And it also contains renders and auto-save files and things like that. So it's very important to do this at the beginning, because if you don't and you start transferring footage, the scratch disks could be set anywhere and you don't know where your footage is. So always set your scratch disks before you start transferring any files from your camera. So when you open Final Cut, you save a project file. Very next thing is you set your scratch disks. So to do that, you click on Final Cut Pro, System Settings. That opens up your System Settings window, and here is where you can set your scratch disk. So one quick note before we start, you can choose to capture video and audio to separate hard drives, which can be useful in some cases. In this case, we're just going to capture everything into one spot. So it's not a big deal, but just to make you aware, if you click this little checkbox at the bottom here, it says capture audio video to separate files. If I do that, then that highlights the audio, and then you can separate it to different drives if you want. But I'm just going to turn that off for now because we don't need that. Okay, so if I click set, then this is where I can tell, this is where I'm going to tell my footage to go when I start transferring it. So I'm going to go to my desktop, project 1, and footage. So this is where all my footage is going to be transferred for this project. And I'm going to click choose. Okay, so that's one thing you have to do. Now there's 3 others down here. You can see the 3 set buttons. There's waveform, thumbnail, and autosave. So these are just some supporting metadata and whatnot that will be saved with your Final Cut Pro project file. So I'm just going to click set on each of these and set it to the exact same spot. So desktop, project 1, footage, and I'm going to hit choose. And I'm going to do it for all 3 of these. Desktop, project 1, footage, choose. And then my autosave, I'm going to put in the same spot too. And what this is, you can tell Final Cut to autosave your project file, which we've already created, every 10 minutes or so. Just in case you don't save and your computer crashes, it'll autosave for you, and you may need to go back to it. So it's a good thing to have turned on. So it's gonna, those autosave files are going to be in that same folder system as well. Okay, so that's the basics of setting your scratch disk. Now if I hit OK, it's going to solidify it, and if I just quick flip back to the Finder and I go into my footage folder, you can see it's made 3 folders, and it'll make more once we start working and start transferring files. But these are the 3 basic folders. There's your capture scratch, and then your audio and your video render files. So if I click on capture scratch, inside here is where all the footage is going to go. So in the footage folder and then the capture scratch folder is where all of my QuickTime movies are going to be once they're transferred from my camera. So again, it's organized, you know exactly where it's going to be, and it'll be in that capture scratch folder. Once you start editing in the timeline and you start rendering things, all of those render files are going to be in this folder, and audio render files will be in that folder. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Just basics of setting up a new project and media management system on your hard drive. So remember, before you start your project, make a new folder, and inside of it make some subfolders and break it down into all the different kind of files you're going to have. And then in Final Cut Pro, first thing you do is you start a new project, file, save project as, so you get that project file. And then after that, you set your scratch disks so that you know exactly where all of your media is going to be.